Looks good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Welcome back.
Hi.
Hello. First time we had you on. Most viewed episode to date. I think it's at 117 views. Most feedback on your episode. How was your first experience on the show?
It was good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Did you like it? What were you expecting?
I thought it was going to be long, drawn out, but the hour went like that.
Yeah. What would you
Covered all kind of stuff.
Did you would you recommend people doing podcast like as a media platform? As like would you encourage, someone came up to you and they said, think about starting a podcast, would you encourage it? Would you discourage it? Would you tell them it's a bad idea?
No, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What'd you get from it?
A lot of good conversation that
Yeah.
you and I normally wouldn't have just because you're coming and going and we got busy lives, but just sitting down, having a conversation, hour and a half, it was really good.
I wanted to get into a few things. I definitely had a slight agenda here. I wanted to talk about the role you've played in your career as a police officer, specifically as a woman in the academy, as a woman running the departments and moving up in the command force. I really want you to dive deep into it. I want you to get into the nooks and crannies of it and how you've had to deal with certain, I guess, quick opinions about women and how you would present if a woman came up to you and said, you know, I want to take this position, but I'm scared to because I feel like men are dominant at the force or they're dominating in that specific industry, how you would talk to that person. They are, exactly. That's what I think is interesting is you recognize that and everyone recognizes it, but you've, at least to me, as being my mother, I've never seen you hesitate to even have like a slight fear as like that being an excuse for you to not enter or at least start the process of, you've never used the excuse as men to repress you from getting the certain positions you want as a police officer.
Absolutely. Nope. Never would.
How was your experience from day one, from when you first got out of the academy?
It's not easy. I joined the academy in 1990, where...
How was police officers at this time?
1990, they were well respected. They were authority that people listened to, not argued about. They were coming out of the 80s, the 70s and the 80s, where police officers were a little bit more aggressive. So I think the 90s and the late 90s, police officers were coming into the technology world. We were going away from writing reports to actually typing reports and having them on CDs. Computerized. We had computers in our cars. We had telephones in our cars that we were allowed to utilize. The big block phones, they were something else.
Just talk to me.
But,
not the camera.
okay.
Just relax. Just conversation. We're not. There's no camera here. We're just conversation.
So I think being a police officer in the 90s was a good time.
How was the force? What was the men to female ratio? What was the overall theme of being a police officer? You know, firefighters kind of get the representation of kind of like, you know, like high school boys, kind of like dirty people, never grow up. At least that's what I've heard. And if you're a firefighter, I apologize, but what are you gonna do? Then, you know, you kind of hear about different jobs, have different things. What was your first impression of getting into the police force and the employees you dealt with? Did you want to start moving up the ladder? Did you want to pay your dues? Did you even care about that?
I never really wanted to be promoted and climb up the ladder or anything like that. I went into police work for one reason only, and that was to help people in everyday life, which you do. I think in the back of my mind, I wanted to eventually become a detective and figure crimes out, and not so much on why they happened, but how they happened, which I did. I had the opportunity to do that in my career. But being a police officer in the 90s was good.
Yeah.
It was good, yeah.
What did you start out of?
I started out at the University of Maryland College Park as a police officer one, they call it, a rookie.
Like a campus?
Yeah, I was
Police
campus
officer?
police. Yep.
How old were you?
I was just turned 22.
Mm-hmm.
Just turned 22. And,
So you were the same age that everyone else was in college.
Yes.
How was that
That made
experience
it
like?
difficult.
Yeah, how was that like?
That made it a little difficult.
What does that mean?
Because I was still young and 22 and single and going out dancing and hanging out with my girlfriends and partying. Then when I went to work for 8 hours, 5 days a week,
Conflict of interest almost.
well, not so much. That's what I was running into on a college campus.
Felt sympathetic almost.
No, I just felt like I needed to get out of there.
Yeah, it's hard to do that, and when you answer, you don't have to say You're okay.
Okay.
It's not stressful.
It's just a thing I do.
I know. Rob does the same thing. So you went from the University of Maryland, and then you transitioned to Prince George's County. How was that? Why was that? And where did that come from? Was it increase of money? Like you said, was it a conflict of interest, or was it because you're young and you didn't want to be at a college campus? You wanted more excitement, or you wanted more a path to go up? I guess the University of Maryland, there's not a upper senior level at University of Maryland police force.
Actually they do. They go from police officer 1 all the way up to chief of police. Very political. Campus police, very, very political.
Even in the 90s?
Yes, absolutely. Probably more so now, but yes, in the 90s as well. So you kind of had to, not a whole lot of people are going to send their kids to a college where there's high crime. So being proactive was much better than being preactive. So we did a lot of community service, a lot of one-on-one, a lot of going out and talking to kids and stuff like that. And I was the same age. I was talking to people the same age as me, if not older, and it made it a little difficult.
So you think
maybe not so much to them, but to me, I had in the back of my head, hey, I'm the same age as these guys, and when I'm not working, I'm out jamming and partying just like they are.
Yeah, but to them,
the difference is that I wasn't getting in trouble, but.
Yeah, exactly. And you also have the badge on, which makes you look more intimidating to anybody who isn't in the police force. The overall skills that it takes to be a police officer, everything from the physical attributes to the mental attributes to the emotional attributes to the family-based attributes, anything that it takes to be a police officer, from your experience, what do you think the few key characteristics, personality traits do you find most successful among all the police officers? And then what do you find most successful for you? Like what helped you the most in the police force?
Okay.
And then what do you find that you, I guess, what personality trait characteristic did you have that separated you? Why were you able to climb up the ladder, even though being a woman and I'm trying to get to the point where if I'm a girl, I come up to you and say, hey, I want to join the police force, and then you say, okay, go do it, and then they say something about how it's not a fair gender setting for a job, and you would respond to them saying, oh, you don't need so-and-so because you have so-and-so.
Okay, so obviously over the years, I have been able to touch other female police officers' lives. So as an FTO, field training officer, they would put female officers with me on purpose, I reckon. Sometimes not so much. I had male trainees also, but
I would
always tell them day one. Not so much day one. Okay, so like I would watch them for about a week in the car while we're doing our tours on showing them the rules and regulations and the policies and the procedures and their beats and who they're going to need to know on inside the community, where's a good place to use the bathroom, where's a good place not to eat, that kind of a thing.
So that right there, is that different than the way that men were trained?
No.
Okay,
not
so
at
the
all.
first thing you guys do is figure out the community.
About a week of that, and I watch because everybody has a different personality, right? Mm-hmm. So some of the females that I've trained have been very timid. Mm-hmm. Some of the other females that I've trained have been very overly
too aggressive,
trying.
Yeah. Make up a personality they think they need, but they don't have.
Right, but my number one advice to every female that I've ever trained and spoke to is, you're a female first, mm-hmm. you're a lady, mm-hmm. then you're your position, then you're a police officer.
The female, what's the lady part mean?
You don't need to give up. You don't need to be rude. You don't need to be one of the boys mm-hmm. to be successful at being a police officer, where a lot of women come into the force thinking, I got to be just like them, if not better. And sometimes that's giving up your femininity.
Yeah.
And I never did that.
So you're saying so overarching view again in the abstract, the quantitative view, there is a few personality traits, characteristics that will benefit you if you have these blank, 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 blank in the police academy. You're saying, being a female, you don't need to have blank, 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 because
that's right.
Although you don't have that specific personality trait or characteristic, you can create your own path.
Yes, because you don't want, every police officer is different. Mm-hmm. Thank God. Every person is different. Mm-hmm. So being in a police officer's position, you don't want 10 Beckys. You don't want.
How would you describe
10 Roberts?
What does that mean, 10 Beckys?
You don't want 10 police officers just like me.
Well, what does just like you mean? Like, what type of cop are you? Like, what type? How did you go about it?
I am a very.
Because that's interesting. I think a lot of people.
Caring police officer. Mm-hmm. I care about not just going to the call and taking a report and don't have no subject and then roll out.
Yeah.
That will bother me for 2 or 3 days, if not a week.
So you sympathize.
Yes, and I'll go back. I'd follow up. I always follow up on the individual and go back and say, hey, how's that experience? How are you dealing with that experience now? How are you feeling? That kind of thing. And that's a trait. That's a personality. That's not something that you learn in the academy. It's not something that they're taught. You're usually so busy that you're just going call to call. You go take the report. Sorry for your loss, and you keep pushing. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying all cops are like that, but in the early 90s it was. So I was a little bit looked at differently.
Mm-hmm. Wait 1 second.
However,
1 second. What was gonna happen? Still go.
Do you have the window open and the air conditioner on?
We don't know the AC doesn't work in this room. Alright, that's better.
Okay.
You're on a roll.
Where was
Stop
I?
saying you feel good.
Where was I?
You were saying you were talking about how
you're not taught those kind of things. You're not taught those kind of things. In the academy, you're taught handguns. You're taught law. You're taught how to defuse a situation. You're taught what you need to do in different calls that are like a theft or a rape or a robbery. Mm-hmm. You're taught how to handle and what questions to ask. Matter of fact, I always say who, what, when, where, and why.
Yeah.
So
I
did those things.
So there's a uniform idea of how to go about the job, just like in the military. They break you down, so they build you back up. Almost not like an extreme, like a cult would say, but definitely like at McDonald's, you get the same thing at every McDonald's. This is how you do it. This is how you wear your clothing.
Yes. There's
certain handbooks that you do to be a cop, but for you and your success, there's not a lot of teaching of, oh no, it's okay to be like a maternal figure. It's okay to be sensitive. It's okay to show emotion with the victim or even the culprit.
Right. The witnesses,
mm-hmm.
the subject,
mm-hmm.
Anybody who's involved. As a police officer, you see the 1% of the bad, right?
The 1% of the world.
1% of the bad in the world.
Yeah.
So, and you see it 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Maybe. where most people who have been involved in an incident, that's their first time seeing it, even if it's a witness or being the victim. So I have always sympathized with them, saying, you know what, this might be the first time they've ever dealt with this. No wonder they're acting like this. And everybody acts different too. Every victim is not textbook, feel sorry for me, cry, get mad victim. Everybody reacts differently. And I've learned that over the years. And I treat them differently the way they react.
I grew up with a bunch of different police officers and family and friends. And one thing I've always noticed about you and Rob, especially you, there is if someone asked me what my parents did for a living, I would hesitate for a second and then say police officer. When it comes to my dad, for you, I would hesitate for like 5 seconds. Not because you're a bad police officer, but because the way you are a police officer is very similar to the way you're a friend, the same way you're a mother, because you sympathize. So if you go out to a case and someone, does a domestic violence, you pull out the victim and the person who committed the crime, and it's not boom, 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 boom. It's not we got to do this and this and this. It's boom, you okay?
Right.
Let's talk.
Absolutely.
How was your day? How was your week? Because like you said, there's a shock factor to everybody. Like if I witness a car accident, you've seen them, you've dealt with them. I'm like, whoa.
Right.
So you need to calm the situation down. And you would say you would say that in the police force, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so just stop me.
Right, I will.
Just trying to summarize it and paraphrase it. In the police academy, they may say there may be a whole chapter how to deal with the crime scene, and then there might be a blurb saying calm down really sympathize with the people, and then they move on. You would bold that part. You would say
absolutely
that's important. As police officer for Officer Rebecca Labs, there is a mandatory, in my mind, in your mind, as you're teaching these other,
absolutely
sympathize with them.
Yep. You get one opportunity for a first impression, and that opportunity better be good. The impression better be good, because if it's not, you're not going to get much out of that individual who just went through something traumatic.
For both sides, right? Victim.
Absolutely.
In the what's the other thing?
Witness, victim, and we call them suspect or subject.
Yeah, the subject. Same thing with the subject.
Yes.
Because if you go up to the subject and you're very aggressive with the subject, then they might become subject times 2.
Right.
And you don't want that. So you want to calm down the situation.
And I always go into a situation. I'm just me. Like you said, Mike. I'm no different than I am.
Keep a little bit closer.
I'm no different than going to the grocery store, going to church, getting in my police cruiser, or going to command at my division.
Yeah.
I'm no different. I'm the same person.
And you would say that is a very powerful, very needed quality to have.
Yes, because if people see that you're sincere and that you're
genuine.
Yeah, because if they can see through you. I know I can see through people when...
Especially criminals.
Yes.
They deal with that all day.
I always tell people, you can fake it for only so long until somebody can see through you. And once somebody sees through you, woo, they got the upper hand. Yeah. So I just figure, just be who I am, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
And what happens in those times? I know, I keep on moving it.
What,
that it doesn't work.
You back out and you start another way. Yeah.
How would you deal with the cases where there is a larger individual, there's a more violent crime? Would you typically get called out for that? And second off, was there an option? Doesn't matter. And third off, how would you? I remember this story. It might be really blurry, but I remember this time you told me something about there was, I think I don't know, like a shooting or something, and I could just be making this up, but it's in my brain somewhere. There was a story you told me. I think Rob told us to the whole family. I think it was like Christmas. I do want to hear a lot. I do want them to hear a lot of your stories. So some of them, the funnier ones. But there was one where there was like a shooting. You showed up to the scene, and the dude who was doing the shooting was still there, and you apprehended him, and he wasn't as aggressive because of you being a woman, you calmed him down. Am I just making this up? Does that make sense? Or
Okay, so that's when I was a detective.
mm-hmm.
And it sort of went like that. The guy was found on the scene,
Yeah.
and he was being told, you did it, basically got the smoking gun in your hand,
Yeah.
and no one was getting through to him.
Mm-hmm.
So I started conversating with him,
Mm-hmm.
and just one-on-one. And
How big? How was this guy looking? Aggressive?
he was just denying everything and wanted to leave the scene. Wanted to leave the scene. And I talked him into not leaving the scene and to conversating with me. And we're here to rectify the situation. And yeah, he was a big guy, but I don't believe he was a threat at that time because there were so many of us, and just one of him. So I think that was the reason. But just being calm and talking to people the way you want to be talking to, even though they're scumbags, they still want to be talked to.
I'm still a person.
Absolutely, as a human being.
Which I think is something that, especially as a woman, that is something that's innate in woman nature, and being a female. That, because I know with guys, if it's eye contact for too long, it's a competition. So for a gentleman like that, if there's all dudes showing up to the scene, no one's going to get a response out of him because there's a dominance hierarchy that needs to be met.
Yes.
It's human nature. You guys are cops. I did this. I'm not going to admit to it. You keep on forcing me. I'm going to keep on overpowering you. And then you become this neutral force where you just kind of, cops, calm down. Like for you, you feel protected.
Right.
You have all these other cops here. And you also, for the criminal, for the suspect, it's, hey, dude, what's going on?
Right.
It's going to be okay. Like, you're fine. Like, you messed up here. And, usually I would feel like most suspects already know they messed up. So they've already kind of reconciled that in their brain.
That's true.
But now they're just kind of come off that high. If I'm a criminal, I go out and shoot and kill somebody. I probably already knew what I was going to do days in advance. And I probably already came to the decision with, I probably haven't rationalized I'm going to jail, but I have rationalized I'm going to kill that person. So whatever that is already settled. But after you do it, you don't know that part. You can't know that part until you commit the crime.
Right.
So then
you don't know how you're going to react to it.
And then that part is where it can get violent. If you have the textbook cop, like I said, stop me if I'm wrong, it can become more violent. But if you have like a police officer like you, for example, and I know all cops, I know my dad did it too, but you just have a different stature about you. You just calm people down, and you know these people. I mean, you grew up in their area, so you know what they're dealing with.
Right. The way I look at it is, if you come into a situation, any situation, it could be a teacher teaching a class, it could be a doctor breaking bad news to an individual who may have cancer, it can be a police officer going into a domestic. If you go in at a excite level, if you go in as an aggressive level from the very beginning, there's no way to diffuse that situation. Yeah. If you go into a level like, you know what, we're going to talk like a human being, and then the other person doesn't want to be necessarily a human being, you can always raise your sense of dominance. Yeah. But you can never go in, act like, excuse my French, an asshole, and then back up and pretend you're not an asshole. You just can't do it. Yeah. So I've always looked. It's always worked for me. Go in at a reasonable level, whatever that situation is. Makes it, if it's a low level or a high level of reason, and you can always grow on that if you need to. Absolutely.
Yeah. So don't go into aggressive. Don't go into competitive.
Right. Now that works for me. That doesn't work for everybody. There's police officers out there that I've had many occasions with. They go in as a nice little level like myself, very mediocre, but because of their statue and the way they look, it's already on. The individual's already looking at him like, oh, they want to fight.
How would you fix that? How would you remedy that? Because that's like, for me, I mean, I go into situations, I'm usually the bigger one there. And I know for me, I've learned over a period of time that the first thing I say to somebody in any situation, doesn't matter if someone's even as simple as someone coming up to me at the gym and saying, hey, I'm looking to sign up here. Me, I can't be too aggressive depending on the person. So I do things subconsciously to calm that down.
Absolutely.
Whether it be if it's a bigger person than me, I don't want to seem too timid because I don't want them to try to get something over me. But if it's like a small, petite, 5'4" girl, I don't want to seem too aggressive.
Right.
I try to close myself up a little bit.
It's body language.
Yeah,
right?
which you can't learn. They don't teach you that.
They you know what they do teach us? Body language of others. To be able to read other people's body language. Mm-hmm. If you go into a situation, you have, like you said, someone your size standing there, and why'd you stop me? Because you meet the description. What description? Blonde hair, blue eye, 6'1", slimmer built. And we're going to talk to you because somebody just got robbed down the street and you meet the description. And that individual is standing there, clenching his teeth, got his hands balled up, but he's looking at you and being respectful. I have to look at the body language. I have to react on the body language as well. So if I come across something like that, I'm not going to go in and say, hey, how you doing? You meet this description. I'm going to be a little more aggressive. So it's all about making sure you know about your surroundings and just keeping your head on a swivel and trying to really read people.
Did you experience any turbulence as you were trying to climb the ladders?
Well, I never.
Was that intentional?
So.
Because for me, as a child, it was like you were this cop, and then like you were always just like you were here, but not like in a bad way. Like you were mounted, and then you were back to the
the road.
Then you're recruiting, and then you were like you always seemed like just I want this, I want this, I want this, but never. But all those to me, at least as a child, was never like moving up the ladder. It was just like staying on the same plane.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
But you were going like a hopscotch. You were going horizontal.
Right, because a police department needs everything that you just listed. They need recruiters. They need background investigators. They need mounted officers. They need detectives. They need community service police officers. And as a police officer and a person, once I learn something and I've mastered it, I'm ready for the next thing.
Because of boredom or because
I
a lot
don't know.
of people?
I think it's just me.
A lot of people love that. A lot of people do that.
I do it in my own home with cleaning.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm going to clean the closet. Okay, I'm bored with that now. I want to hop over here and do this.
Rob does the same thing. I do the same thing.
Yes, I think it's makeup, right?
Genetics.
Our genetics and where we come from and what we see as well. But I wanted to be a well-rounded police officer, and I think being a well-rounded anything, you need to know everything that there is about being a police officer to become a well-rounded one. There's some police officers never left the street.
Yeah,
There's some police officers that been mounted officers for 20 years, never worked the road. Detectives that been there for 10, 15, 20 years and never done anything else. I'm not saying that they're bad police officers. They're very, very good at what they do. However, that just wasn't for me.
That wasn't exciting.
Right. I love throwing myself in something new, learning it, mastering it, and moving on to the next thing.
Yeah, and it's fun. I love doing these podcasts for this reason. The same reason why when we were talking to Dad, I was learning about him selling those little alcohol candy bottles that have alcohol to school. I didn't know that. We related on that. The same thing with you learning, having a police department, and like my hand's the police department, but there's different segments of it. There's cops, motorcycle, mounted, riot team, SWAT
bicycles,
team.
right.
And I know for most people, I would even say Jen, she's very comfortable with just doing the thing.
Yes.
And she's okay with that, which like there's not and I've loved to talk to her about that because like she's so good in college. Why? Because she's like, oh, this is college time. I'm doing college time. Me, I'm like, this is college time, but this isn't just college time. I'm also young. I don't have kids. I'm not married. This is not just college time for me. For me, this is start this, do this, do this, and do this, and do this.
And that's okay, but that's your makeup.
Exactly. And it's interesting, and that's why I love doing these podcasts, because I can listen to you say that, and you try everything. And then when you try everything, it's almost like a byproduct of that is like this self-confidence booster to not just stay on the horizontal plane. Because once you know how this part of the business works, that part of the business, once you know how human resources, marketing department, accounting department, once you have a little bit of each, you feel comfortable enough to take that next step.
Exactly.
And I did the same thing at the restaurant. Busser, dishwasher, front line, back of line, cater, server, whatever it was. And then manager at 17. And now I'm doing that the job I love. I love contracts, but I'll clean the bathroom. I'll open. I'll close. I try to know what every single part of the job is. To become manager, no, but to just have that confidence in that,
Yes.
and like that is the secret, right? You would say that's the secret to just not get caught in the comfort. If
Don't get stale.
Yeah.
If something gets
Stagnant,
stale
yeah.
to you, it's time to move on. But now I'm very blessed that I know when I'm getting stale,
yeah,
or bored.
yeah,
A lot of people don't. A lot of people just become cynic or stuck in their ways, or this is good enough for me, that kind of a thing. And I kind of was like that when it comes to promotion, because I was a police officer for 17 years before I became a sergeant. And then I even retired as a sergeant. Then I moved on to another position in a police department, and it was like a lateral. I was able to go from a sergeant to a sergeant. So that was kind of nice. And then within 6 months, I was an acting lieutenant.
yeah.
And then within 2 years, I was a lieutenant.
It was like that switch. Once you decided to turn the switch on, you're like, oh, this is this. You look at everything like there's certain ways that you do things, right? If I go to school, they teach you how to do this, to do this, to do this. The way you take classes, you do this and this and this. But they don't tell you the shortcuts because people don't want to believe that there's shortcuts.
Right.
People don't want to believe that, oh, if you become friends with this person, or if you do this, or if you work here, or if you go there, if you know that person, you can move up quicker. People don't like that. People don't want to know that. People also don't want to think that that's true. But also, if you become a person who's just good at communicating with everybody, once again, the byproduct of that is you can become sergeant, lieutenant.
You become so resourceful
Yeah.
when you know. When you're in one zone, that's the zone you know. People who need to know about that zone are coming to you.
Yeah.
They need to know something else, they're not coming to you.
Yeah.
They need something else, they're not coming to you.
Yeah.
So I think that's what happened to me. Like when I started moving up the ranks from a sergeant now to a commander, captain, it's all within 7 years.
Yeah.
Even though prior to that I was police officer 15, I wasn't staggered though. I was still learning.
Like I said, jumping side to side.
Absolutely. And what I was doing is not knowing, but
Yeah.
getting my resources, knowing the ins and outs of the department. And then I've always been a people person. I love people. I love talking to people. I love hanging out with people. I would say I'm an extreme extrovert.
Extrovert, yeah.
However, I like my privacy. So becoming a manager and all of those other things that you and I just spoke about, all it really is now I'm a people person for my employees
Yeah.
instead of the outside world. So I get a lot of satisfaction helping other police officers, younger cops, security guards, civilians within my department and within my reach, helping them
Get the job, move up in the job.
training and benefits and retirement and just everyday struggle when they come in and they tell me something's going on at home. A lot of people shut down, that's not my business, or, keep work from play or play from work or home. And I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. I believe if I care about a person at work, I'm going to care about that person on what he or she has to say that's bothering them when they're not at work. Because that influences your product at work.
Yeah. When people say keep personal life outside of work, that's the worst thing a manager could say because that's not true. It's impossible.
That's an old way of thinking.
It's an old way to think. It's
Yep.
impossible.
That's management like 70s and 80s.
Management 2019 too. I see it. I've known people, like especially I've known plenty of people. I have friends that tell me about people that they've worked with, and it's like it's the same thing. I love my job because it's not like that. Like the people I work with,
Right.
it's like a one family thing. It's like
Absolutely.
transparency. Everyone's open. Everyone texts each other, and
Yep.
it's really nice to see that. Also, it's cool because I work out at a gym and I work at a gym, so it's kind of like I know with my previous job, if I saw any of my employees, any of my staff members in like regular clothing, it was weird. But like at a gym,
It is regular
you
clothing.
work out there and then you work there too,
Right.
which is really nice. So we went over just a few characteristics about you that you would recommend. Not even recommending, but I guess the overarching theme is that you would recommend just listening to what you got to listen to, just dealing with the guidelines that you have to follow, but then really taking that and having that become maybe 50% of your overall job.
Right.
And then the other 50%, you capitalize on what you are and what you do and who you are at the job.
Yes, and when you work with people, being a police officer, you're 90% of your job is working with people.
Mm-hmm.
Good people, bad people, nice people, employees, not employees, just people you meet on the street, but people. That is what that's your job. 90% of it, you're going to be dealing with people. And I would recommend for anyone who wants to become a police officer to make sure you like people before you go into it, because if you don't, you're going to have a very hard way to go.
Yeah. Yeah,
Just
you
like-
always
just like-
have friction
yeah.
with management. You have friction.
Yeah, it's like teaching, being a elementary school teacher. You better like kids before you get into it, or it's going to be hard. So
Yeah. When you went through the academy and you were on your journey of hopefully retiring here soon, was there ever a time where you're like, damn, I wish I went to college, or man, I could have used a degree here? Because I hear that all the time from people, but I've never heard that from you or Rob. I never heard a moment where it's like, I wish I had a degree when it's related to work, not when it's related to like an ego or like I want a degree because
Right.
damn, that should have been a check mark. When you were becoming sergeant and captain, was there even a need for it? Did you feel like there was a need for it, or did you feel like? And I know there's the answer that you want to answer
that's why I'm smiling.
because I'm in college and that you want all the kids to answer. But then there's
Right.
also the real answer.
Right.
The real answer where it's, I'm going to let you answer, but get your foot in the door. Maybe you need a degree now for that. But once you got that, I don't care what degree you got.
Nothing will ever replace experience.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing will ever replace that
Yeah.
on-the-job training experience. Now,
Now to
Have
get
I-
that experience,
ha-
you need college, though, it seems like.
right, so having a college degree for me,
Mm-hmm.
no, I've never regretted it.
Yeah.
And I don't think it would have benefit me either
Mm-hmm.
in any way, because I'm at where I'm at because of my experiences and my time on the job.
In your extreme, like you go to school to capitalize on your computational intelligence, on your educational intelligence.
Right, don't get me wrong.
But you weren't
college-
capitalized on that.
No. But college, again, you asked me if I regret it. No, but
Yeah.
college is a higher level of learning and teaching. So what I'm getting now, I get to go to leadership programs. I'm getting ready to go one in October that John Hopkins puts on, and once it's a 40-hour a week training.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get a certificate and pass and all that good stuff if I get through it. That's higher education. That's a good thing. Some people go to 4 years of school for leadership, and management and marketing and stuff. Right? What?
That.
I mean, but it all depends on the individual.
Yeah.
If some people love school, so
Yeah.
there's some. I know people who have made their life out of going to college and
Yeah.
going to school and continue on and on and on. However,
But you knew early on that your education, that you didn't care about increasing that when it came to like math and English. You care because you had the opposite side of the spectrum where it was like, oh, I have a Harvard level social education. You can't teach me that. You know what I mean? Like maybe you didn't have the Yale, the Harvard, Stanford mathematical and analytical and data and whatever, that kind of education. But I think it's really important for people to realize, if you don't have that, if you never did well in high school, don't waste your time in college. You're not going to do well. You're going
Right.
to hate it. You're going to resent it. You're going to resent your parents. You're
Yes.
going to resent everybody.
yes.
And you did that. Like
And
you were
right.
like, I could be good, but I'm not that good. I could be better, but I don't really want that because, oh wait, I can become friends with this person, that person, that person, this person.
And I'm going to become a police officer. And when I become a police officer, somebody wants to they're going to do my background. They're going to look at my psychological, they're going to look at my physical, they're going to look at the way I answer questions on oral boards. And if they want me, they're going to take me and they're going to put me into a police academy, which is college educated courses. We got credits and all that stuff too, but it's not enough for a 4-year degree, right? So they did. They took me. I went. It was difficult. I'm not going to lie to you because it was a college
level
education, and I was coming out of high school where I chose not to do well in high school on many different reasons, but it was okay. It was all right for me because I knew that once I get into a police academy, and that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I didn't want to spend 4 years in school somewhere learning criminal justice. I'd rather be on the road learning criminal justice, and that's what I did.
Yeah, I find that super fascinating.
That's not for everybody, though.
No, it's definitely not. But like you said, you knew that college wasn't for you.
Yes, I knew
I've never known 100%. I may have known 98%. There may have been times where I almost hit 100%, but it was never like college wasn't for me because at the end of the day, I was looking at things. I was like, I don't know the answer to that. I want to know the answers to that.
Oh, if you want to know the answers, then...
Exactly. So that's why I think it's
Right.
important. I think it's really important for people to... I think it's important for two things. I think it's important to have that one person in your life who is super honest with you. And if they break your ego down, they make you feel like absolute shit, that's okay if they're honest with you. And then I think it's also really important for you to do a self-assessment on yourself, an honest self-assessment.
Yes.
Which, in order to get to the honesty, you really need to be broken down. And then once that happened, I was like, oh, wait, no. You don't need to go to college because that is the next step. You can go to college because you want to keep learning about certain things. And I think that's really important to understand that for you to say, I think it's just as important. This is really, this should be emphasized. It's just as important and it's just as powerful and it's just as should be, in my mind it is, but I think it should be just as respectful for someone to say, I am not going to college. I know that 100%, as that should be respected just as much as saying, I am going to college. I know that 100%. I think there should be no difference between that. If someone's 100% with it, and I think if you say, well, you just don't know yet, that's okay, cool.
Maybe I don't, but at this point in my life, I know what I want and what
Yeah.
I don't want, right?
And it, as long as you keep something together, if you keep yourself together, you'll figure it out. Like, you'll figure out college. You'll figure out how to become a sergeant or chief at a police department.
Right.
You figure out how to...
If you want something and you have a vision and you want that vision to come to Faru, you are going to do anything and everything you can to get there. College or no college. I mean, it's just the way it is.
What would you have done if you didn't become a police
I have
officer?
no idea. I really don't. At a very, very early age, I knew I wanted to become a police officer. And
Where'd that come from? I think I asked you that before.
yeah, we talked about this on the last episode, but you just know. Some people just know what's going to be good for them and what's not going to be good for them. And now, like I said, I was a secretary receptionist up until I was able to be 21 and started putting in applications. So that's from 17, 18, 19, 20, 4.5 years that I was like, should have been in college.
Yeah.
Most people would have been in college. But for those 4.5 years, I was working. I was a secretary. I was a receptionist. I worked downtown in a lobbyist firm, downtown D.C. And I knew for those 4 years that I did it to make an earning that this is not going to be my life because my heart wasn't in it. It was...
Once again, you were just getting bored. You're like, this is not fun.
Yeah, it's not. It wasn't for me at all. I wasn't helping anyone other than... I was more of a machine. I was a secretary.
It wasn't self-fulfilling. It was
Answering
it was
phones
slow
and typing
suicide.
memos and
Yeah.
listening to other people and
I felt like a cog in the machine. There was no...
right. I'm like, how is this helping anybody?
Yeah. You felt replaceable.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a dangerous thing when you feel replaceable at a
Right.
job.
Right.
Because you want to take yourself, you want to put that gap between you and the next person. Be like, oh, yeah, you can hire them, but...
They're not going to be like me.
They're not going to be like
right.
me.
Exactly.
You don't want to... you always... I think that's really important. You always want to find that job. I always explain to people, like, I would much rather, if I didn't have responsibilities, I would be 100% okay making $20,000 a year, living out of my car, especially with the car I have now. Got a lot of room in the back seat. I'd be totally fine with that, rather than making 90 to 100 grand a year and living just a not even stressful, because living in a car would be stressful, but a unfulfilling job.
That's
like if
right.
I was making $20,000 a year, training people at a gym, and I had to live out of my car, but I got to do that, train people at a gym, I would much rather do that than being a stupid data analyst making 100 grand a year.
I can
doing
relate to
something that I just don't believe in, and I know is replaceable, and I know a robot can do it, and I know that there's nothing that's special about my job.
Right.
You know, there's nothing special about the job, and there's nothing special. And like, what makes me special, I can't even show here.
Right.
I can't show there.
Right.
And I think as a police officer, the intention, if you ask the top people at the position of police officer, they don't really want you to be super, they don't want you to show everything about you. They want you to follow these rules because these rules work. But in order to really grow at a position, to really grow at any aspect in your life, especially at your occupation, you have to be able to have that freedom and then do it, to just express yourself.
So in police work, there's rules, policies, procedures, and they're thick books for police officers.
Yeah.
And they're there to for management, to make sure that the police officer is armed with what he or she can and can't do while they're on the job.
Mm-hmm.
Being sued, basically.
Yeah.
I've always looked at those things as guidelines, and not so much.
You stretch them.
Yes.
Flexibility.
Yes. And now that I'm in a management position, those rules and guidelines and things are more important to me because I'm inflicting them on my other people. But because the way I was, I can relate to others, and if there are guidelines to them and they work inside those guidelines to get stuff done, I'm okay with that. Even though it's not exactly what it says on paper, the end result is the same, and you got there without the headache, I'm good with that.
A few things we can finish up here. First thing, you final sentence or paragraph or whatever to tell somebody, girl or guy, I want to be a police officer. What should my next step be?
If you already know in your heart and in your head,
100%.
the next step is to do a ride along.
You're right on.
Go.
How do you do that?
What kind? Because now you have to figure out. There's so many different police officers jobs out there, right? So, and they're all different. Even though you're the cop, you can be a city police officer, you can be a county police officer, you can be state trooper, you can be park
Federal.
police officer, federal. There's so many different ones. So I say, think about it inside your heart. What kind of cop you want to be? And when I say that, who do you want to serve? So that's the police officer you want to be. Who are the people you want to serve? Do you want to be in the city, going to call, bumping calls, going back to back, bumping your calls, or do you want to be a state trooper? And most state troopers here
Traffic.
in this kind of area, it's more traffic. Or do you want to be a ranger, park rangers? Do you want to be DNR, go out and be on the water and inflict, keep policies and procedures on boats and on water? Or do you want to be a cop, a campus police? Or, I mean, there's so many out there. So that's why I say, determine on who you want to serve, why you want to serve them, and then go out there and do the ride along, because it's not always what you think it's going to be.
So the self-evaluation you'd think would be the most important
Yes.
thing. And like physically doing it, like, and it sounds stupid, but like physically writing it down,
Yes.
and then like talking to people about it.
Yep. Pros and cons. Most police officers who become police officers know police officers.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So talk to that individual who's been your mentor, or talk to that individual who has been there growing up. We know a couple families that their sons and daughters have become police officers, and it's directly they come to Robert and I because we grew up with them and they grew up with us, and we've had very candid conversations with them to let them know what they're getting ready to get themselves into. And they have done what I've asked them to do, ride-alongs, see who you want to serve, and so far so good.
Yeah, I probably
They're
know
doing well.
30 cops. Like I probably know more cops than I think most people ever see in their life.
And that's because
Yeah.
your mom and dad.
What's next after the occupation?
Retirement.
Are you and Dad rolling out?
What do you mean rolling out?
You guys getting out of here?
Maryland is a beautiful state. We would love to stay, but
But
the taxes are way too high for retirement people.
So where would you go?
We would look around to non-taxable retirement places. There's so many of them. There's Pennsylvania, there's Delaware, there's West Virginia. There's a lot of different ones. You know me, I need to live somewhere near the water. It needs to be a pond, a creek, a river, an ocean, something.
How much longer you think in the police force?
I would like to say my short-term goal is 3 years. My long-term goal is 5.
And what's after that?
That's when we would love
Occupation wise.
probably a lot of volunteer work.
A lot of volunteer
A lot
work.
of volunteer work.
Totally see you doing that.
If not for schools, hospitals. Absolutely. Maybe even police department. Who knows?
Yeah, something local, something small.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of people were asking for you to come back on. A lot of people.
Really?
Yeah, I had a lot of people. I was talking to somebody. I think he lives out in California. He like hit me up on Facebook, just saying like how funny you were, and like they were saying how like when we talk, it's like not even like your mom. It's like a best friend. Was there anything else you wanted to cover? Anything you wanted to talk about? Anything you feel like I didn't represent you good enough?
I think this was great. This was a good conversation, and I can't wait to come back on again.
All right. Well, we almost did 50 minutes, which is totally fine.
Right,
46
but
minutes is fine.
Doesn't feel like
Plus,
it.
I got a lot of studying to do. Trying to stay in school.
Mike, all I want to one thing to add, and I know you're going to be like, "What is your mom talking?" But proud of you.
Oh,
Keep
thank you.
doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you like doing it.
Yeah, it's fun.
Because you do it well.
Well, podcasting is cool.
Right. You love it. You're doing
Fun.
a good
It's
job
easy.
at it.
It's easy. Like it's so funny.
It's
like
easy to you because you like it.
it's easy to everybody.
I couldn't do that.
You could though, because you just got done telling me how great you were at talking to people. Just treat that thing like it's a person, and then it's so easy. Like it's so funny when people say, "How do you podcast?" It's like, well, how do you? And then I ask them, well, how do you talk to somebody? And then they're like, what do you mean? I was like, well, it's just you're just talking to somebody. But you do got to get over like the fact that it does feel a little narcissistic at first. But you remember me as a child.
Right.
When I was 12 and 13, I was talking to a microphone
Yep.
into this little, actually just found it like last week, this little machine, actually, no, not last week, last night in the guest room. This Hotpod HGPR, I used to record my video games.
Yes, you did.
And I would talk on my microphone. And I mean, so I've always been in front of a camera, talking to a camera since I was 12 years old.
So it's
And
comfortable.
It's comfortable. It's easy for me. I have no issue because like when I record myself, this is, I mean, if you know me, then this is not like, I mean, this is me. This
Right.
is my voice and I can't control the way it sounds. And it's just, it's easy. And I think it's really important.
But coming out of, lack of better words, your shell.
Yeah.
You say when you were 12, you were talking to the mic and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but no one really heard you.
Yeah.
This is you're being heard.
Yeah, and I think it's really important too. Whenever you do podcasts, because I want to get a lot of my friends to do them. They probably won't do them because there's a lot of risk involved, and there's a lot of just blind running into walls.
Yes.
With it, which I have no issue with running into the brick wall. But I think it's really important. I think the podcasting is so interesting because it's so therapeutic more than anything. Like I think so many people, they go out throughout the day and they just feel so closed in. You know, they feel restricted. They feel like they don't have a voice. They feel like no one listens to them when they do talk. They feel like when they do talk, they don't make sense. They might feel stupid. They might be in a relationship or know somebody where they just don't feel like they have a voice in that relationship. And I think the podcast, if you can just get through the first episode, and you can just talk and look at it and be like, yo, I did that.
Not so
Then
bad.
you can do another one.
Right.
You can do another one. And the next thing, and also I attribute my ability to talk from being a server for so long.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
you deal with everybody. You deal with everybody. You deal with people being rude. You deal with when to be rude to somebody, when not to be rude to somebody,
Yes.
and when to just kick people out. You know, you learn these different things, these different strategies. Once again, all these things that are taught and all these things that you learn are not from these books.
Nope.
You know, they're not from the system. They're not from the school. They're not even from your parents, per se. You know, there might be little legs that you can stake into the ground. They might be the first 2 bricks of a building. But I don't care how great your parents raise you. I don't care how great anybody raises you. Because if your argument is, well, you had great parents, okay, well, tell me about the kids who had terrible parents and they're great.
Right.
So if that's your argument, then it should
vice
fix
versa.
Exactly, it should fix to the other side. I think it's important to just do what you want.
Yes.
And just be honestly reckless about it. Like, just do it.
Right.
I've always been the firefighter who I will put the fire out when I need to, but I will let it blaze up until I really need to let it go.
Yeah.
Because it creates something beautiful. Just like when a forest fire happens, you don't want to put it out immediately because the forest needs it, you know, but you don't want to let it go too long because then it kills everything. Same thing with, if you want to do a podcast, just do it. Buy something. And like my first podcast I did on my phone, I just talked into it. And it's still out there. Those episodes are still out there. It's called the Michael Labs Life and Experience. And I did like 40 episodes. I got 2,000 listens. But it was so bad. But
you did
But
it.
this is, but I learned from that. I learned what not to say. I learned what to say. And I think it's really important. Like you said, being a cop, there's just, you just got to get your foot in the door. And once you do that,
be yourself and let yourself grow.
Yeah, and if anyone ever tells you something like you can't do that because this isn't who you are, or if they say don't do this because this could happen, it's like, okay, no, that's I'm not listening to you.
Now, don't get me wrong. Before I became a police officer, I had a lot of naysayers. There's no doubt.
Of course.
No doubt.
Well, I'm not saying that they won't be there, but you don't
Right.
listen to them. They don't matter.
Right, you kind of tuned them out a little bit because the desire and the want the direction where you want to go, kind of that's what you're hearing in your head louder than any kind of negative. And I'm talking good friends and family members.
Yeah. Well, they're the loudest because they care about you the most.
Right.
You know, and I've noticed that like with Taylor, I've like when she wanted to get a dog, I was like, I don't know if you should, and then she's like, you're the one person I expect for not to say that because I know what I shouldn't do, but I need to know what I should do.
Right.
You know, I think that's really important. Like, even if you are scared for somebody, even if you are nervous for what they might do, you are not speaking from their perspective. This is important. You're always speaking from your experience.
Yes. Yep.
So you're trying to box them in, not knowing it. You're doing it out of love. You're doing it out of care. But to you, it sounds like that. To them, it sounds like you are trying to put your experiences on them.
Limited.
You know,
sounds
I think
like you're limiting them,
it's
but
really,
you're really not.
It's really important to just let people go and fall apart. You know, if that happens. But if it doesn't happen, then good. But if it does happen, then
It's
your
the
job
hardest
to
thing in the
intervene.
world. It's the hardest thing in the
Yeah.
world. And you'll find out one day when you're a father. You don't want to see any failure.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's the most dangerous thing ever because
But I do want to.
everybody needs to fail.
Yeah, I don't want to not fail because for me,
What I'm saying is when you have a little Michael running around, you're saying right now because you're not a father,
Yeah.
you're going to say you're going to let them fail. But I'm telling you, it's the hardest thing to step back and let things happen.
Yeah.
You know, don't touch that stove. It's hot. Don't touch that stove. It's hot. Don't touch that stove. It's hot. And you back off and let them touch your stove. You'll never do it.
And if they keep their
You'll
hand
never
on
do
it,
it.
then they're a psychopath, and you kill them.
Okay, I think we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like, comment, subscribe. If you're on an audio platform, please leave it a rating. I think we have 6 ratings, 2 written responses on Apple. Everything's a 5-star rating. I thank you for that. If you guys don't like the episode, please leave it a bad rating. But when you do that, let me know why you don't like it. I don't care about the rating, but I just want you to be honest with me. I probably won't listen to you, or I might, but we'll see. But guys, thanks so much for listening. I will catch you guys in the next episode. This episode was 29. The next one will be episode 30. Almost at 50 episodes. Sorry you guys had to listen to me for 48 hours of talking. Catch you guys in the next one. See ya.